Atlanta Race Riot of 1906, the Atlanta Race Riot of 1906, which started September 22nd, 1906. So welcome to the African History Network show. It is Wednesday, September 22nd, 2021. And we are live. We're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, and also on 910 AM Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. Okay, the screening of the film Hapi, which deals with the role of economics in development of civilization, is coming up at the Charles H. Wright Museum on Sunday, September 26, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be moderating the panel discussion, and there's a lot of our scholars who are in the film. Professor James Small, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, two of my teachers, Dr. Wade Nobles. Also, you have Dr. Julian Malveaux. Shakita, I sent you the trailer to the film Hapi. Let's go to this trailer quickly, then we're going to bring on Brother Mfundishi. Here's the trailer to the film Hapi, the role of economics in development of civilization.
There is a connection between every institution grown out of this country and white supremacy, the nation as a whole, including its laws and its institutions. What you have is a tension between nationalism and globalism.
They had to create something in the mind of the poor whites that distinguished them and separated them from the blacks. And that's where you developed what I call, what James Baldwin called, the religion of whiteness.
The police that answer to the politics of that community are going to be driven by the economics of that community because economics and politics overlap.
You know why I wanted to be a politician in a time when we disenfranchised? Because of power.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th healthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our communities?
Tamir Rice, Sean Bell, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, and Michael Brown, just to name a few.
Some that incorrectly classify their death as police brutality. However, it is in fact murder and a form of terrorism. It is ironically very similar to what took place during chattel enslavement. What steps can be taken to make it stop?
The devil happy.
All right. So on the line, we're joined by Brother Mfundishi Jhutyms Salim, who is featured also in the film Hapi. Hotep, brother, how you doing tonight? All right. Oh, yeah, we can hear you, man. We hear you loud and clear. All right, brother. Good to have you on, Brother Mfundishi. And Mfundishi is also in the film The Tekken from director Taki Grant, the fantastic film, The Tekken, and you in there with one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, man. So if I see Dr. J and Mfundishi together, I know I'm in the right place. Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us, brother, how'd you get involved in this film Hapi, and what did you bring to the film?
Well, I'm one of Taki's teachers.
Okay.
I was his teacher in African studies, and I taught him Medu Necha.
Okay. Yes.
Beginning to advance.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of his kinetic spiritual connection has been through me. So I was kind of influential in one of the many brothers in his life that helped him come up with the whole idea that we need to talk about how do we empower ourselves.
Yes.
And economics has to be a true voice to it. You know, Dr. J talks about the politics, the economics, and the culture work together to control the community.
Yes.
So Taki wanted to bring this to light so that we can see. If we don't know our history, we don't even know how we got disenfranchised.
Exactly.
And if we don't know our history, we don't know how great we were and how great we still are.
Absolutely. And the other thing is, go ahead. Go ahead. Finish that thought.
No, those were the catalysts, that drove this movie.
Absolutely. And Dr. Leonard Jeffries, man, has been one of my teachers for years. I've interviewed him. We just had him on for 2 hours on Sunday. So I think that may have been my 18th time interviewing him. He was one of my first interviews in 2010 when I started the African History Network show. And Professor James Small is one of my teachers also. So you're correct, man. They teach about Dr. J and Professor Small teach about the politics, economics, and African history and culture being the foundation. And you're so correct dealing with the economics, but we have to understand our history and culture so we know what to do with the economics, because you can make the money and do something to destroy yourself and destroy your people with it.
Yes, sir. And that's kind of what we're doing. And everybody who comes to America goes straight to the black community to open up a business because they know we don't discriminate. We spend our money with everybody first before we spend it with us. And that's kind of suicidal.
Absolutely.
So, once you begin to develop some more pride in yourself, you understand that you are your own salvation. That the Clark used to tell us, we have no friends in the world. We have to be our own best friends. And we have all our own answers.
Right. Yeah, we have all of our own answers as well. And African history and culture gives us the foundation, our values and interests, and our principles. It gives us that cultural paradigm that we see reality through. So what are some of the things now? Okay, so first of all, for those that don't know, because we have people listening all across the country and they come with different levels of understanding of history, explain to people what the metal netter is.
The Medu Neter is what the Europeans call hieroglyphics, ancient Kemetic writing or ancient Egyptian writing. It's a spoken language that was spoken in ancient Kemet, and it is the written language that was spoken in ancient Kemet. Kemet is the true name of ancient Egypt. Actually, there's no ancient Egypt. Egypt is a name coined by the Greeks at the end of 4,000 years of history. So it's ancient Kemet. Okay, and Kemet means the black community. Okay, Egyptologists are trying to have you think it means the black land. But the determinative, see, now that we can read the Medu Neter, we can see and read ourselves. We don't have to take nobody's word for it.
Right.
So we can see the determinative there is black people.
Right.
So when they say Kemet, they're talking about the city or the people.
Right.
The black people, the black community.
Right, exactly.
So the Medu Neter is the language that they spoke. It is one of the oldest written languages on the planet Earth. It's before cuneiform, which is probably one of the second ancient languages that have a broad array of literature. Because there's probably been some crude markings going way back, but not with an extensive literature in math, science, astronomy, astrology, poetry. All of this is in Medu Neter, the ancient language of ancient Kemet, which is kind of like the foundation of what we consider modern civilization. All comes from the paradigm that was set up in ancient Kemet.
Absolutely.
So I'm kind of like, before I got even into Kemet, I was an Africologist. My major was Africana Studies and African History, and I was already studying the culture, many cultures of African people. We're the most diverse people on the planet. And so even my lectures that I'm doing right now is that culture is your medicine.
Right.
Once you step outside of your culture paradigm, you are doomed.
Right. So explain that a little bit. Yeah, explain that a little bit. So culture is medicine. And, Dr. Marimba Ani, who wrote the book Yurugu, an African-centered critique of European cultural thought and behavior, talks about how culture acts as an immune system that protects us from outsiders coming in and attacking us. Talk about culture in the way that you just mentioned it, as it being a medicine.
Yes, it's your fuel and your medicine, and it sustains you into to help you flourish. See, any culture can help you survive. Any religion can help you survive. You had some bad times, somebody came in with a doctrine to help you soothe your mind and get you across troubled waters.
Right.
Now, once you get across troubled waters, none of those religions are connected to your culture. None of those religions is connected to your immune system and your lifeline. None of those systems are dedicated to the music that you have, the foods that you eat,
Right.
the ancestors that you're connected to. So you get disconnected from your personal ancestors. That's dangerous, number one.
Mm-hmm.
So number two, you don't know your lifeline. You're speaking somebody else's language, which is culture. Language only expresses a culture. And culture is how you relate to nature.
Right.
That means we're relating to nature by somebody else's paradigm. Dr. Amos Wilson, may his spirit and soul be with us,
Right.
used to say, we see each other through European eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to go on vacations where Europeans go.
Right.
So we want to lay on the beach in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, so we're already black. we want to go do Paris. Not do Africa. We want to go do Paris. We want to tour through Europe. We want to do everything that Europeans do. They define success for us because it's within their culture paradigm. So when they define success for us, that means they benefit more than we do from our own success.
Right. Right. Well, that
Sounds really thin.
it does.
It sounds like rabbits running around thinking they're foxes.
Right. Right.
And you know what's going to happen to rabbits to think they're foxes.
Yeah.
They're coming to dinner.
Right. Well, Doctor. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We are the fuel. We are the fuel for the Western world. And no Western country wants Africa to be self-sustaining, autonomous, and sovereignty.
Right.
Because America, Europe, Asia, all of them want African resources and don't want to pay for it.
Right.
So it's in their best interest to keep us ignorant of our own culture, ignorant of our own relationship, and ignorant to controlling our own environment. Let me just answer this one more point.
Go ahead.
Dr. Clark used to say, they laughed at our language, and we changed it. They laughed at our names, and we changed them. They laughed at our spiritual system, the deification of our ancestors, and we changed it.
Mm-hmm.
They laughed at our clothes, and we changed it. So now you understand when I talk about cultural genocide. So now we wear somebody else's clothes, we speak in somebody else's language, we allow somebody else to educate our babies, our precious jewels. We run by an economic system that is detrimental to us, but we are the collateral, and we are the means by which this country got rich and maintains its richness.
Right.
So you see, we're involved in a cultural suicide situation. And so until we can begin to grasp our own history, start educating our own children, understand that our economics has to be unjama, cooperative economics, not capitalism.
Right. Right.
As long as we continue down that road of cultural suicide, then genocide is waiting for us.
Exactly. Yeah, you did. Okay, look, we're coming up on the break. You got a couple more minutes because I want you to give you we're up against a mandatory break, but when we come back, I just want you to close out and I want you to give your social media information, how people can follow you. So just stand by. We're coming up on a mandatory commercial break. Okay, everybody, listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 a.m. Superstation, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the link there where you can register for the Detroit screening September 26th for the film Hapi that Mfundishi is in. We'll talk about this on the other side of the break. Stand by, everybody. Stand by. Okay, stand by. Stand by. Visit AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and we have the information there on the homepage for the Detroit screening of the film Hapi. Stand by. Back from break in 2 minutes. Back 1 minute.
We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Unfortunately, many people confuse what racism is. Racism is a power structure. It was laws and policies that put us in this predicament. It's going to be laws and policies that take us out. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you control the compass of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know.
We have it all on 910 AM Superstation. 910, the Superstation, Detroit's only African-American talk radio.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We're speaking with Brother Mfundishi Jhutyms Salim, and he is featured in the documentary Hapi, the Role of Economics in the Development of Civilization. And we have a screening of the film Hapi on Sunday, September 26th, 2021, 3 p.m. at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. The film director, Taki Grant, will be here in Detroit for the screening. I'll be moderating the panel discussion. So we're wrapping up the discussion here with Brother Mfundishi, but I just wanted him to give his social media information and contacts, how people can get in contact with them, etc., and closing statements. All right, Brother Mfundishi, go ahead.
Surely, yes. My contribution to the film, for example, was to talk about the power of ancient Egypt, and how it was the first economic powerhouse in the world in terms of economics and commerce using the Hapi River. So as a historian and a chematologist and an anthropologist, that was my contribution in the film, showing that we had control of the politics, we had control of the economics, and our culture was intact. Therefore, we flourished.
Right.
Anybody who want to contact me, my network is Mfundishi Jhutyms.net. That's my website. My Facebook is also Mfundishi Jhutyms. And my other social media, Instagram, is Mfundishi Jhutyms. So I think I have a couple of other, but they all are Mfundishi Jhutyms. And I'd like to say thank you very much for inviting me on, and tell the people when they go see Hapi, they're in for a real treat. It is a technical masterpiece. The cinematography is great.
Right.
The historians are dropping powerful information, and it's pleasing in terms of its visuals. So sound, visuals, content, history. It's a documentary that has all those components intact.
Absolutely. And the Hapi River. So this is one of the original names of the Nile River. So explain. So just explain briefly the significance of the Hapi River. You know, today we go and we drink either bottled water, tap water, however whatever way people get water. Okay, but they don't usually go to the river to get water. Okay, so talk about the significance of the Nile River, you know, in 3000 BC.
Okay, so you have to understand, first of all, that the Hapi River, which we call the Nile today,
Mhm.
is the longest river in the world.
Right.
So that's number one. It's the longest river in the world. It was a cultural highway that brought people from the interior of Africa all the way down into Kemet. And they traveled down north. The Hapi River flows down north.
Mhm.
So your maps are kind of like upside down. Coming from up south, the source of the Hapi River is Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Mount Rwenzori in Uganda, forming the White Nile, and Mount Choka with Lake Kenya and its crater, forming the Blue Nile, meeting at Khartoum in Sudan. So it runs through the Sudan and then down into Egypt. And again, like I said, it was a cultural highway. So all the information that was inside of Africa was loaded on ships and boats and brought down the Nile.
Right.
And they introduced commerce and trade to the rest of the world. And so in the film, we asked them, where is your Hapi? Hapi is how you transmit information, how you communicate with people, how you organize your goods and services, how do you impact your community. And so the idea is that Hapi was a cultural giant that was environmental, that was the bloodline. It doesn't rain in ancient Kemet. So almost 99.9% of all their water had to come from the Hapi River. So this was their lifeline.
Right.
Some people will say that Kemet was the gift of Hapi.
Exactly.
And so we wanted to show, like today, even if you're in Detroit, I don't care where you are, where is your Hapi? And I'm not talking about it has to be a river. Where is the flow of the culture that's going to enhance your economic insurgence?
Exactly.
You have to find it. You can't find it, create it.
If you can't find it, create it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Excellent, brother. Thank you. Thank you. And your website here, I'm on your website right now. Your website is Mfundishi Jhutyms.net. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Okay,
That's
good.
correct.
Okay, I have it up here. We posted the link here to your website here on the thread of the broadcast. And for those that don't know, Hapi is Hapi. Hapi. Okay, we have it up here on the screen also. So those watching, okay, you just look at the screen. We have it up here too. All right, brother Mfundishi. Look, man, it's good always talking to you. I saw you a few years back. I think it was Essex College for the ASCAC conference. I think maybe once at Howard University. I remember when Dr. Francis Cress Wilson was still alive. It was there at Howard, and that's where I met Dr. Yosef Ben Yakinen, and I saw Dr. Richard King again, and I took a picture with both of them.
Right.
Yeah. And then okay, and I saw you there. Okay, excellent, brother. Well, look, it's always good talking to you, man. We'll have you back soon, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, brother. Hotep. Have a good night, Hotep. Peace. All right, everybody. That's brother Mfundishi. So we're going to have him back soon. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have the information to register for the screening of the film Hapi that's taking place at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, Sunday, September 26, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Visit. We have the link here at our website, and it connects you to Hapi's website. You can register for tickets, and they have a multi-city tour also. So the tour kicks off in Detroit, but they're also going to, let's see, they're going to Atlanta, October 23rd, Philadelphia, October 30th, Houston, Texas, November 6th, Washington, D.C., December 5th, and Bridgeport, December 18th. Okay. So visit the website. Tickets are $25 for Detroit. And we're going to be doing a panel discussion also at the Detroit screening. And I'll be moderating the panel discussion. So you'll get to see me as well. All right. And Brother Taki Grant, who's the director of the film, he'll be here in Detroit also. If you saw the film Nubia, which features Dr. Linda Jeffries, and Taki Grant directed that one, and Taki directed the film The Tekken. And I posted clips of The Tekken and Nubia back when they came out, something like 2010. Brother Mfundishi is in the film The Tekken as well. And The Tekken deals with the layout of it deals with the African influence on the layout of Washington, D.C., the film The Tekken. And the Tekken is what the Washington Monument is. The Washington Monument is a African symbol of resurrection coming from the mythology of Asar, Aset, and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus. And the Tekken, we see that in Freemasonry, and we know Freemasonry has its origins in the teachings coming out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. All right, so it's a deep history. So we know the Washington Monument is a Tekken. All right, okay, so that documentary, Dr. Linda Jeffries and Fiduci and Taki Grant are in that documentary. Okay, I want to get to this next story here quickly here. So, we've been talking about the police reform bill, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And we've gone through and broken down what's actually in the bill. Okay. We've gone through and broken down what's actually in the bill. Well, you remember back in May on this show, I talked about comments from Representative James Clyburn, and Representative James Clyburn said, if you can't get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed in the Senate with qualified immunity in the bill, take qualified immunity out of the bill, get the rest of the bill passed, come back and get qualified immunity later. And I said he's correct, because you don't have 10 Republicans in the Senate that are going to vote to end qualified immunity, because most of those Republicans are supported by police unions. You need 60 votes to get that bill passed in the Senate. It's only 50 Democrats, which means you need 10 Republicans to get the bill passed. And Senator Tim Scott, Black Tea Party Republican from South Carolina, who's been on the U.S. Senate floor before, talking about how he was stopped by police 18 times as a U.S. Senator. He's negotiating on behalf of Republicans. And I said, dude, you don't have 10 Republicans in the Senate. They're going to vote to repeal that. And activists were coming out and saying, no, you need to keep fighting and all this. And then I said it in June, it's not going to work. I said it in July, it's not going to work. I said it in August. I said it in May on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I said it in May on this show. I said it again, I think it was August on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm a panelist every Friday. I said it on this show. Well, today, Senator Cory Booker called off the talks with Senator Tim Scott, because he's saying what I told you back in May. So we look at this. We look at the reporting here from the Washington Post, and we're going to go to the clip from the readout, Shakita, from Joanne Reed. We're going to go to that clip in just a second. Clip number 2. We look at the story here from the Washington Post, and I already knew this was going to take place, and they should have done this back in May. They should have done this back in May, because you wasted all that time. No deal on bill to overhaul policing in aftermath of protests over killing of Black Americans. Now, the same thing. Clyburn was correct. Clyburn told them, don't just sit there month after month and you can't get the bill passed. Take qualified immunity out, get the rest of the bill passed, get qualified immunity later. Bipartisan negotiations on overhauling the nation's policing practices to stem the killings of African Americans, and they ain't the only ones being killed by police, because more white people killed each year by police than African Americans. This is the same thing I said about voting rights. It's the same thing about this. If you just make this a black issue, you're going to lose. It's the same thing. I just said it Friday on Roland Martin Unfiltered. If you just you can't go to the Senate talking about black this and black that, because there's only 2.5 black people in the entire U.S. Senate, and one of them, and the reason why I say half is because Tim Scott, Republican from South Carolina, half the time he doesn't act like he's black. There's 100 U.S. senators. 95 of them are white. So, like Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, African Americans only make up 3.5% of the population of West Virginia. Going to Joe Manchin talking about black this, black that. No, you have to understand pressure points, and you got to understand that pressure points. You have to show how your argument, how these issues and policies impact many of their constituents that are not African American. The majority of their constituents, you show how it's impacting them, galvanize that support. It's just like right now, you got, okay, if you look at 38 million disabled Americans are registered to vote. When you talk about attacking mail-in ballots, you're hurting disabled Americans, 38 million who registered to vote regardless of race. When you talk about attacking mail-in ballots, you're talking about hurting many voters who are non-African American. So if we look at this, piece here from the Washington Post, this is from today. Democrats ended months of negotiations that began after the killing of George Floyd in May 2020 and subsequent nationwide protests. Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, and Representative Karen Bass, Democrat of California, both are African American, negotiating on behalf of the Democrats. Senator Tim Scott wanted to negotiate on behalf of Republicans. He's one of the few Republicans that actually wants to get some type of police reform bill actually passed, because he's talked about being a victim of racial profiling as a U.S. senator. He's talked about that on the U.S. Senate floor. So the parties, these were the parties' lead negotiators. They said they had compromised repeatedly by Republicans. Sought more concessions. He said the party leaders, the party's lead negotiators said they had compromised repeatedly, but Republicans sought more concessions. Republicans are getting pressure when it comes to qualified immunity from police unions. Senator Cory Booker said at the end of the day, it was clear they were not making the progress that we needed to make. At the end of the day, it was clear that we were not making the progress that we needed to make. Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, Republican, the lead negotiator for the Republicans, blamed Democrats, claiming that their push to quote unquote defund law enforcement made it impossible to agree on legislation. So he used the whole defund the police narrative to then say it's impossible to negotiate and for us to come to an agreement. Now, it is true in some cities, where have you have increases in various types of crimes, things like that. Part of that has to do with the fact that you're opening back up society, because like this time last year, things were shut down because of COVID. That plays a part in it. President Joe Biden, Democratic congressional leaders, Representative Karen Bass and Senator Cory Booker, have rejected the idea of slashing police departments' budgets. The whole defund the police narrative is being used as the excuse for Republicans not coming to an agreement with Democrats. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is that many Republicans are getting pressure from police unions not to repeal qualified immunity because these police unions endorsed them in the first place. Quote, after months of making progress, I am deeply disappointed that Democrats have once again squandered a crucial opportunity to implement meaningful reform to make our neighborhoods safer and mend the tenuous relationship between law enforcement and communities of color, said Senator Tim Scott. But the biggest reforms are coming from Democrats, not Republicans, because you got many Republicans who you had some who said because Derek Chauvin was convicted of killing George Floyd, maybe you don't need police reform. You had some Republican senators who said because Derek Chauvin was convicted of killing George Floyd, you don't need police reform. Yes, you do, because George Floyd shouldn't have been killed in the first place. Over a potentially counterfeit $20 bill. Yeah, you do need police reform. Over a potentially counterfeit $20 bill. And even if the bill was counterfeit, there's no evidence that George Floyd knew it was counterfeit, because during the trial, and we covered every day of the trial here on this show, and I watched all the testimony, read articles about it. During the trial, they revealed surveillance footage on the day that George Floyd was killed there in the Cup Foods convenience store that we had never seen before. After George Floyd did the transaction to buy what he was buying, he stayed in the store. If you're purposely trying to pass counterfeit money, you're not going to stick around inside the store. And then he goes outside, sits in the car. The customer attendant in the store, the clerk, goes out to confront him about the bill. George Floyd's still in the car. He goes inside, calls the police, goes back outside. George Floyd's still out there. Police show up. George Floyd's still there. If you passing counterfeit money, you're gonna leave. So when I hear some Republican senators who say, oh, well, maybe we don't need police reform because Chauvin was found guilty, those are people that need to be voted out of office, because they're also blocking other bills that we're advocating for. Derek Chauvin, even though in one sense we want to see rogue police officers held accountable, the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota has to pay out $27 million for a rogue police officer over a counterfeit $20 bill. The city has to pay for that. Yeah, you do need police reform. That's ridiculous. So Republicans and Democrats had been eager to finalize bipartisan legislation last year after a national outcry over the killings of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Breonna Taylor in Louisiana, and Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia focused national attention on law enforcement's deteriorating relationship with the African American communities and the broader issue of racism in the United States. But interest in the issue waned among Republicans after Benedict Donald, the traitor-in-chief, ran for re-election on a law and order platform that focused on white voters. And congressional Republicans continued to portray Democrats as soft on crime and eager to gut police departments. Let's go to this clip here from the Readout with Joanne Reed today. Okay, pause it right there. Just cue it up. Pause it right there. Let's go quickly to the phone line, Shakita. Let's go to Jerome, line 1, while you get that queued back up. Jerome, welcome to the African History Network show. Tell us where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Detroit, Michigan, 910 a.m. Superstation.
Okay, go ahead with your question or comment.
Thank you for taking my call, and you are the man.
Oh, thanks.
I always thought that it wasn't a police problem. I thought that it's actually a people problem. I mean, is it possible that we could have went for a people reform bill instead of a police reform bill?
When you say people reform bill, you're talking about the way one group of people, one race of people see another race of people. You're talking about treating them like human beings. What do you mean?
Well, yeah. Well, there was a lot of black people shot by regular white people also. Like Ahmaud Arbery and a few other. I mean, it's like
right.
I think there should be a people reform bill.
Well, part of it has to do with the way African Americans are depicted in society, in the media, etc. A lot of that has to do with that. But with this right here, this legislation is dealing with law enforcement. It's specifically this legislation, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, is specifically dealing with law enforcement. And there's about 9 different sections of the bill, and it's about 14 different bullet points that it deals with. Okay, just you keep listening. We're going to go through some of the main parts of what the bill consists of, because this is federal legislation. Okay, keep listening, Jerome. All right, Shakita, you have this queued up from the readout. Let's go to clip 2.
Because right now they're not being held to account. Let's be honest.
And people are dying as a result. It's a hell of a game to play with people's lives. It's terrifying. Dr. Uche Blackstock, Renan Amadi, thank you both very much. All right, tonight's absolute worst is still ahead as a foreign leader brings his COVID-loving ways to the Big Apple. But first, it's looking like bipartisan toss on a police reform bill has completely collapsed, with no plan C waiting in the wings. More after this. Stay with us. It took convicted murderer Derek Chauvin 9 minutes and 29 seconds to press his knee into George Floyd's neck. The video of that horrific moment sparked a racial reckoning, but even that wasn't enough to motivate Senate Republicans. Today, Democratic Senator Cory Booker called his Republican counterpart, South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, and told him that Democrats were done with negotiating on the police reform bill. Scott refused to accept the Democrats' final offer on the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Here's Senator Booker earlier today.
It was clear that we were not making the progress that we needed to make to give America what I think the largest civil rights protests we've had in our country's history demands for substantive, meaningful reform. There were still things I was hoping to do, but when I couldn't get to a point where I can meet with families, tell them that we were going to address the expectations that they put your family member in harm's way. This is past and cold.
Democrats have been negotiating with Senator Scott in good faith for months. The key sticking point was qualified immunity, which shields police officers from civil liability for professional misconduct. The most recent version of the bill was a slimmed-down version that did not include qualified immunity reform, the criminalization of excessive use of force and no-knock warrants. Lawyers for the Floyd family called the decision extremely disappointing and urged Democrats to bring the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act to the floor for a vote so Americans can see who is looking out for their community's best interests. It's been more than a year since Floyd's murder changed the dynamic around conversations about policing in America. Today, that conversation came to a sad and uneventful end, at least for now. For more, I'm joined by the Reverend Al Sharpton, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and president of the National Action Network. And Rev, Senator Tim Scott is blaming Democrats for this. He's blaming them for walking away and throwing around a lot of language about Democrats wanting to defund the police, which was not a part of this bill at all. But I wonder what you make of it as somebody who was at the table during a lot of this process. There are all of these different police agencies that all have to be negotiated with. NBC did a piece talking about it. You've got the national police unions. You've got the National Sheriff's Association. You've got a separate chief of police organization. And instead of all unifying around the negotiations and all deciding what they wanted to do, they all have sort of taken different tacks on what they want. I don't know if you have this perception, but it feels like Tim Scott was sort of negotiating with Lindsey Graham over whether they could get the sheriff to go along with one thing, while Cory Booker was negotiating with the chiefs of police on another thing. It seems like this might have been doomed from the start.
Many of us felt that it was doomed, but we gave them the time to deal with this. And we see the results of that particular path, which is why we called on them to call the vote. We want them to have on the record who is supporting real substantive police reform. Let's not forget, most Americans polled after seeing the video of Chauvin's knee on George Floyd's neck, 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Say something must be done. And the courts did what they're supposed to do. They convicted Chauvin of murder 2, murder 3, and manslaughter. The Senate is saying, let it go the way it is. The Senate Republicans. We need to have a roll call on what the Democrats say. It is unbelievable to us when you saw blacks and whites, people of all backgrounds, marching all over the world. We ended the summer last year, 200,000 people marched with Martin Luther King III now in Washington on this bill and on police reform. And they are going to turn around and negotiate with just police unions and the national sergeants and have them veto qualified immunity. So in other words, we're going to protect you, but who's going to protect the people? That is unacceptable, and we're going to keep driving this and force this to a vote. We want to know who's on the side of protecting the American people. We're not against all police, but apparently they're against all levels of accountability.
You know, I kind of feel like Senator Tim Scott was sort of in the Joe Manchin seat on this, because he was sort of making it sound like he could deliver, because what had to be delivered, since this is not going to fall under, you know, the reconciliation rules because of Joe Manchin, he would have had to deliver 10 Republicans. And he was sort of making it sound like he could, but he couldn't even get Lindsey Graham to back him up with the sheriff, and felt like he was undercut by his fellow South Carolina senator. He couldn't get Lindsey Graham to go along with the ideas. I wonder if he was the right guy to be negotiating with. And do you think we need to also start having that reconciliation conversation about police reform that we're having about voting rights?
I think we must have that conversation about reconciliation. And reconciliation and carve-outs really depend on how it deals with budgets. Well, policemen deal with budgets. We're paying billions of dollars a year for law enforcement, and we have no accountability. We cannot redress any of what they're doing that affects the budgets. And it's not about defunding the police. It's about funding police abuse and saying they're not going to be accountable. No one, I believe, can say with a straight face that what they saw happen with Chauvin was right.
All right. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation, WFDF. We're going to keep going for a couple more minutes here. I'm going to go through quickly what's actually in HR 1280. HR 1280 is the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. You can read what's in the bill at congress.gov. Search for HR 1280 at congress.gov. Congress.gov is where you go to read bills and what's in the bill and see who voted for the bill. Visit our website, africanhistorynetwork.com. africanhistorynetwork.com. You can register for the 10-week online course that I teach, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. Remember, right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace. All right, stand by. Stand by, everybody. All right, visit our website, africanhistorynetwork.com. We have a new 10-week online course that meets on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We do the class live. All the sessions are recorded. As soon as you register, you can watch class number 1 and class number 2. You can watch the class we just did this past weekend. And we deal with history from the Civil War through 1968 and the Black Power movement, okay, to understand what happened to us after slavery ended, what were the laws and policies put in place to put us in the predicament we're in today, and where do we go from here. All right, class is regularly $130, on sale $70 at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and so you can watch the class anytime. We do it live. All the sessions are archived. You can see me in the class. I can't see you, so it's not like a Zoom call where you see everybody on the conference call. It's not like that. I can't see you at all, so you don't have to worry about getting dressed up or anything like that. Okay, and you get 6 bonus lectures from me also when you register for the course. Okay, I want to go back to this here. Read the article from the Washington Post. Now, also, we know Melvin Van Peebles passed away, legendary director, and groundbreaking director of the groundbreaking film 1971 Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. We know he passed away today, 89 years old. So an article here from New York Times. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Melvin Van Peebles, champion of new black cinema, dies at 89. A fertile creative force. He wrote fiction and musicals, but is best known for a breakthrough movie that heralded the genre known as blaxploitation. Okay, so Melvin Van Peebles passed away today. Father of Mario Van Peebles. We know Mario Van Peebles directed New Jack City and directed one of the installments of Roots Reimagined, etc. Okay, let's go to this here. Let's go back to this article from the Washington Post. Okay. We left here. But interest in the issue waned among Republicans after Donald Trump ran for re-election on Law and Order, on the Law and Order platform that focused on white voters, and congressional Republicans continue to portray Democrats as soft on crime and eager to gut police departments. Still, the groundbreaking bipartisan negotiators met for months this year and continue to express optimism for a deal despite the lack of progress on key issues. On Wednesday, September 22nd, they dropped that pretense. Police reform will probably be added to the list of issues activists close to Democrats will point to as reason to get rid of the Senate filibuster rule so the party can pass its priorities on a simple majority vote. So this puts more pressure on Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin to have a carve out or to change the filibuster rules. You don't have to get rid of the filibuster rule. You can see Joe Biden supports moving to a standing filibuster, which is what it used to be some decades ago, and just in changing the filibuster rule, which puts the onus on the minority party as opposed to the onus being on the majority party. That remains unlikely to happen. So the article goes on to say, so the party can pass its priorities on a simple majority vote. That remains unlikely to happen, leaving Democratic leaders promising to find other ways to move forward on changes in policing. They don't have to get rid of the filibuster rule. You can change the filibuster rule. That's extremely important. And Biden supports changing the filibuster rule. That's what a lot of people are not talking about. In a statement, Biden said he was deeply grateful to the Democratic negotiators and faulted Republicans for rejecting modest reforms and refusing to take action on key issues that many in law enforcement were willing to address. Now, Representative, let's see, quote, in the coming weeks, we will continue to work with Senator Booker, Congressman Bass, the members of Congress who are serious about meaningful police reform, President Biden said, leaving open the possibility of executive action on the issue, leaving open the possibility of executive action on the issue. Now, keep in mind that March 3rd, 2021, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed the House of Representatives by a vote of 220 to 212. March 3rd, 2021. Okay. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed the House of Representatives by a vote of 220 to 212. 212 Republicans voted no. Read this article. We've talked about a number of times here. Here's what the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would do. Read this article from NBC News from April 21st, 2021. And it goes through, and I think this is the one that talks about, let me see. I think this is the one that talk about it passing March 3rd. If not, they probably have a link to it in here. Okay, so press Congress to press the bill approved. Okay, the bill approved by Democrats led House in March. Let's go to this one right here. House passes Police Reform Act named for George Floyd. This should be the article here. This one right here. This one came out March 3rd, 2021. House passes Police Reform Act named for George Floyd. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, which is known as HR 1280, passed 220 to 212. 220 to 212, although a Republican representative said he voted yes by mistake and changed the official record to reflect his opposition. 212 Republicans voted no on the bill in the House of Representatives. How many think you're going to vote? How many think are going to vote yes on the bill in the Senate? And 0 voted yes on the bill in the House. This is why I said back in May, you had to take out qualified immunity. You need 10 Republicans to pass the bill. It doesn't exist. You're living in fairy tale land. It don't exist. So if we very quickly here, if we go to judiciary.house.gov, judiciary.house.gov. Now, house.gov is the official website of the House of Representatives. This is a fact sheet for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021 to show actually what's in the bill. We deal with facts and evidence here because proper documentation ends all conversation. We don't deal with all this superfluous nonsense. You can read the fact sheet. Just Google this, go to judiciary.house.gov. And it goes through and breaks this down and says the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act breaks down the categories here. Let's see, can we close this out? The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would, 1, establish a national standard for the operation of police departments. A national standard for the operation of police departments. So they're talking about national standards on policing because here you don't really have national standards for policing. 2, it will mandate data collection on police encounters. 3, reprogram existing funds to invest in transformative community-based policing programs. And 4, streamline federal law to prosecute excessive force and establish independent prosecutors for police investigations. The language of the bill is identical to the version passed in the 116th Congress with the support of the entire Democratic caucus and 3 Republicans. That was the 116th Congress, which was sworn in January 2019. The 117th Congress, which is the Congress in session now, was sworn in January 2021. This bill passed March 3rd, 2021 in the 117th Congress in the House of Representatives. 0 Republicans voted for the bill. after they cried and talked about how it was so tragic what happened to George Floyd, and oh, he has such a cute daughter. No Republicans voted for this bill. So then it goes through and breaks down the different categories in the bill. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021 will work to end racial and religious profiling. It breaks that down. You can read those bullet points. It will save lives by banning chokeholds, no-knock warrants. Okay, you have some Republicans that don't want to do that, ban chokehold, knock warrants. It will limit military equipment on American streets and require body cameras. It will hold police accountable in court. Now, this is extremely important. The most important thing the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act will do is not repeal qualified immunity. That is one of the biggest mistakes, and Democrats are not properly controlling the narrative here. They should take the focus off qualified immunity and put the focus on this right here. The bill would make it easier to prosecute offending officers by amending the federal criminal statute to prosecute police misconduct, mens rea requirement in 18 USC section 242 will be amended from willfulness to reckless standard. From willfulness to a reckless standard. What does this mean? What this means is that the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act will lower the standard to be able to criminally prosecute police officers in federal court when they unjustly kill somebody. Because right now, the standard that has to be met is called willful intent. And you have to willfully prove, you have to prove that an officer willfully intended to deprive someone of their civil rights. So in federal court, when police officers are prosecuted in federal court, they're prosecuted on a civil rights violation. Okay, and they're prosecuted in criminal federal court, but it's based upon the fact that they willfully intended to deprive someone of their civil rights, which goes to state of mind. It's a very, very high bar that has to be met to get a criminal conviction in federal court of police officers. It's different than state court. So to prove willful intent is you really have to have a lot of evidence. Like if the officer said, I'm going to kill you, if the officer said, I'm going to kill this person, okay, and then they actually do, that helps contribute to state of mind. But if the officer doesn't say, I'm going to kill this person, it's harder to prove willful intent. The standard that has to be proven is not that they killed somebody. It's not that they unjustly killed somebody in federal court. Is that they willfully intended to deprive someone of their civil rights. Well, you have to prove the burden of proof is not that they actually did deprive someone of their civil rights. You have to prove that they willfully intended to do that. That's why it's hard to get criminal convictions in federal courts of police officers, because the standard is so high. What this bill would do is reduce that standard from willful intent to recklessness, which means you can prosecute more officers and ultimately convict more officers in criminal federal court, which means they go to prison. Repealing qualified immunity does not send them to prison. That is civil court. That's a lawsuit. That's a civil lawsuit where they pay monetary damages. They're not going to prison over that. People keep repeating this narrative that they hear in the media and they haven't read shit. That's part of the problem. The second thing it will do is it enables individuals to recover damages in civil court when law enforcement officers violate their constitutional rights by eliminating qualified immunity for law enforcement. That's civil court. They're not going to prison over that. What do you think is a bigger deterrent? Officers actually getting criminally convicted, going to prison, losing their job, losing rights, okay, having to be in prison, away from their family, or having to pay or being sued and having to pay monetary damages. Because if they have to pay monetary damages, number one, police unions are going to help them raise money. Number two, I guarantee you with 100% certainty, if qualified immunity is repealed, I guarantee you with 100% certainty, insurance companies will start selling police misconduct insurance, police misconduct liability insurance. That's what insurance companies are going to start selling, because they already sell insurance policies for cities dealing with police misconduct. And if insurance companies sell insurance policies for your dog or your cat, if they have to have an expensive operation called pet insurance, you think insurance companies are not going to sell police misconduct liability insurance to 800,000 law enforcement officers? This is why we do research on this show. Qualified immunity is not the most important thing in the bill. That's just people ain't read the damn bill. That's part of the problem. That's why you got to go read this stuff. Because when you go through and read this, lowering the federal standard, and they're telling you right here, federal criminal statute. That means putting police officers in prison. That's a bigger deterrent than a lawsuit in civil court. Read the rest of this bill, because it's a very broad, strong bill at the federal level. Now, the majority of control of policing is not the federal level, it's at the state and local level. But at the federal, this is a strong bill at the federal level. It's still strong even if you remove qualified immunity. Problem is, people are talking and haven't read the bill. So we don't do that here. We actually do research. And we show you the research so you can read it yourself and don't make the same mistakes as these other people on social media run their mouths and have no clue what the hell they're talking about. Okay, that's why I show you all this information. I don't try to hoard the knowledge. No, the right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. That's our motto. Proper documentation ends all quality. Proper documentation ends all conversation. All right. So share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. Turn on live notifications so you know when we go live. If you'd like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. $, the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. And at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, click on the yellow donate button. Register for my online courses also. Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So when you go through and look at these bills, just like the police reform bill, the only people that support that bill are Democrats. What we have to understand is that we're dealing with a numbers game. In the U.S. Senate, for most of these bills, you need 60 votes to pass the bill. If you have almost all the Democrats, or all of them, 50 Democrats that support the bill, and no Republicans, or not enough Republicans to support the bill, that means the Republicans are obstructionists. So in the 2022 midterm election, why would you leave the obstructionists in office to take back control of the House and the Senate when they've been trying to block all the bills that we've been advocating for? That's not logical. unless you just want to complain and not get anything accomplished. That's not logical. It's a numbers game. It takes 218 votes to get any bill passed in the House of Representatives. And for most bills in the Senate, it takes 60 votes. Unless you can get it through the budget reconciliation process, where it's a 51 vote simple majority, and most bills don't qualify for that. Elections have consequences. We have to be smarter. It's not about political parties. It's about understanding policies and who is supporting policies that are beneficial for us and that we're advocating for, and who keeps obstructing those bills and is trying to pass legislation that is detrimental to us. This is understanding political self-defense. We talked about this article as soon as it came out from Rolling Stone. Biden tells top Democrats he's preparing lobbying blitz on filibuster reform, voting rights. The president, sources say, has promised to lean on centrists to change the filibuster rules and say Democrats imperil effort to pass a new voting rights bill. Because Biden has already said, and this goes on to say, and I need to subscribe to Rolling Stone so I can read this. I have so many subscriptions, paid subscriptions to news outlets, because I monitor about 35 different news sources daily, and some of the stuff I pay for it. I have paid subscriptions to a lot of these news sources. But back about 3 months ago, the town hall meeting that Biden had with Don Lemon on CNN, he said then that he supported moving to a standing filibuster in the Senate, which changes the way the filibuster is now. That's not being talked about a lot. All right, we're gonna leave it there. We'll talk about this more tomorrow. We'll give an update on Haiti tomorrow. We had a guest at the beginning of the show, so that took up a lot of time. And I've been like really busy. I'm in this media class that Dr. Avis Jones, the Weaver, is teaching, and this class meets twice a day. I'll be on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. Thursday, we'll talk about Melvin Van Peebles. We'll give an update on Haiti. And you know what? We were supposed to talk about the Atlanta Race Riot in 1906. So this okay. Let's just deal with this quickly. We've talked about this in the class I teach also on Saturdays, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement, 1865 to 1968. We'll look at this briefly today, and I guess we'll talk about it some more tomorrow. So this began on September 22nd, 1906. September 22nd, 1906. The date's the anniversary of the beginning of the Atlanta Race Riot in 1906. So on the afternoon of September 22nd, 1906, Atlanta newspapers report 4 separate assaults. Atlanta newspapers report 4 separate assaults on white women by African-American men, none of which are ever substantiated by hard evidence. None of which are ever substantiated by hard evidence. And this comes from history.com. This was, I look at every morning, I look at the this day in history from history.com. And I already have some information on this because this is one of the race riots I talk about in from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. So let's look at this here. Okay, let's pull this back up. I didn't mean to do that. Let's see here. Okay, let's get the right caption here. Okay. Just a second. Let's go back to the article. Okay, so on the afternoon of September 22nd, 1906, newspapers reported 4 separate assaults of white women by African-American men, none of which were ever substantiated by hard evidence. None of which were ever substantiated by hard evidence. Inflamed by these fabrications and resentful of the city's growing African-American population, white Atlantans rioted. White Atlantans rioted. Over the next few days, the race riot will claim the lives of at least 12 African Americans in Atlanta. The total may be more than twice as high and devastate the city's African American community. The total may be more than twice as high and devastate the city's African American community. Now, the race riot took place against the backdrop of a heated gubernatorial primary. Atlanta's population had nearly doubled over the last 3 decades, and its African American population had risen from 9,000 in 1880 to 35,000 in 1900. So in this 20-year period of time, the African American population in Atlanta almost tripled. It went from 9,000 in 1880 to 35,000 by 1900. During Reconstruction, 1865 to 1877, and we deal with the Reconstruction era and Jim Crow era in our Saturday class. During Reconstruction, before Jim Crow laws became ubiquitous or everywhere, African Americans competed with whites for jobs, held political office, and established a thriving saloon society. Okay, salon society. In fact, it was progress like this that led many whites to embrace Jim Crow, and the Atlanta race riot of 1906 was a direct result of this phenomenon. So after Reconstruction in 1877, we see this blatant effort of white supremacists in the southern states to take back full control of society, take back full control of the state legislatures, all the political offices, implement these Jim Crow laws to suppress and oppress African Americans, and lock us out of politics as much as possible. We see an increase in domestic terrorism on African Americans as well. Now, in the 19, and then you have Plessy versus Ferguson, U.S. Supreme Court case 1906. Before Plessy versus Ferguson, we start seeing Jim Crow laws to segregate African Americans, but also to oppress them and restrict their ability to take advantage of their rights in society. Public transportation, different things like this, libraries, all different amenities, different things like this. We see this after Reconstruction ends. Now, in 1906, the Democratic gubernatorial primary, one candidate, Hoke Smith, ran on a platform of explicitly disenfranchising the city's African American population. Okay, he ran on the platform of explicitly disenfranchising the city's African American population, arguing that giving them the right to vote had led to pursue social and economic opportunities that should only be available to whites. Okay, he argued, Hoke Smith, who was a gubernatorial candidate, ran on the platform of explicitly disenfranchising the city's African American population, arguing that giving them the right to vote had led them to pursue social and economic opportunities that should only be available to whites. So he's saying these Negroes don't know their place. Okay. He's saying that's what he's saying. He's saying these Negroes don't know their place, and we have to keep them in their place. This is basically what's taking place, and this is after you had things like the Mississippi State Constitution of 1890, South Carolina State Constitution of 1895, things like this that implement Jim Crow laws, the poll taxes and literacy tests. Okay, this is after that. This is a famous caricature here from a French magazine, the cover of French magazine Le Petit Journal in October 1906, depicting the Atlanta 1906 Atlanta race riot. Let's see if we can bring this up. Just a second here. Let me try to bring this picture up here. All right, hold on. Let's see, what can we do? All right, just say, let's see, why isn't this coming up? All right, let's do it like this here. Okay, so this is depicting the race riot. This is a famous painting. I mean, a famous caricature depicting the race riot. Okay, so Hoke Smith's opponent was Clark Howell for the governor's race in Georgia. Clark Howell was not anti-segregation or pro-civil rights. He simply maintained that the poll tax, P-O-L-L, the poll tax was already doing enough to prevent African-American participation in government. Okay, now Hoke Smith, who argued that giving African Americans the right to vote had led them to pursue social and economic opportunities that should only be available to whites. Hoke Smith was the former publisher of the Atlanta Journal, while Clark Howell was the editor of the Atlanta Journal of the Atlanta Constitution. And it was no coincidence that the city's papers ran a slew of inflammatory articles about African-American men committing crimes as the primary election neared. So the tension boiled over on September 22nd after local newspapers ran with a story about an African-American man assaulting a white woman. a white mob formed downtown and headed for Decatur Street and the surrounding district of African-American businesses and saloons. Okay, it's actually it should be saloons. That's actually what it should be. Not salon. It should be saloons. Hold on, let's see, where do we go right here? Now, they looted African-American owned businesses, swarmed streetcars, and attacked passengers and assaulted hundreds, killing at least a dozen African-Americans. Okay, they swarmed streetcars, they attacked African-American owned businesses, looted African-American owned businesses, and killed at least a dozen African-Americans. The militia arrived around midnight, but it was only when heavy rain started a few hours later that the mob finally dispersed. Over the next few days, Black and white vigilante groups roamed the area while law enforcement stood by and watched and by some accounts helped as armed white men moved into African-American neighborhoods. They cracked down on a group of African-American men who had stockpiled weapons in Brownsville, Georgia on September 24th, 1906, arresting 250 men and confiscating the guns. Now, although leaders of both races made attempts at reconciliation in the wake of the riot, many viewed it as proof that white Americans would sooner revoke their African-American neighbors' right to vote, destroy their economic and social institutions, and murder them in the streets than allow them an equal place in society. Okay? This was proof for many African Americans that white people would rather revoke their right to vote, destroy their economic and social institutions, and kill them in the streets than give them an equal place in society. The grief, exhaustion, and rage felt by the African American community in the wake of the massacre was captured by Dr. W.B. Du Bois in his poem, A Litany of Atlanta, published later in 1906. So I looked at a number of different articles today dealing with this. Atlanta Race Riot in 1906. BlackDen.com has one also. BlackDen.com. The Georgia Encyclopedia, GeorgiaEncyclopedia.com has one as well. They have an extensive article. But check this out here. Atlanta Race Riot in 1906 begins. September 22nd, 1906. All right, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And you can support us at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And through Cash App, $ the AHN Show, through Cash App, $ the AHN Show, through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show. This is our official Cash App account, $ the AHN Show, SHOW. When you go to it, it shows my name, Michael, and it shows my picture there. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App accounts. All right. Okay, we have to get out of here. Remember, right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. Peace.